The Galactic Council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive structure that looked like a silver wheel spinning slowly among the stars. Inside, thousands of seats arranged in circles around a central platform. Each seat glowed with soft light, marked with symbols of the civilizations that owned them. Some seats belonged to beings made of crystal. Others belonged to creatures that looked like floating clouds of gas. There were insect-like beings with too many legs to count, and reptilian creatures with scales that shimmered in every color. But one seat stood empty. It had always been empty. The symbol above it showed a small blue and green planet, simple and plain compared to the elaborate marks of other worlds. This was Earth's seat, and for 10,000 years, no one had come to claim it. Ambassador Krelvor sat in his seat. His reptilian body coiled comfortably as he watched the day's proceedings with half-closed eyes. He was old even by the standards of his people, and he had seen many councils come and go. His scales were a deep green that had faded to gray at the edges, and his yellow eyes missed nothing. The Zenithar Empire had been powerful for thousands of years, and Krelvor made sure everyone remembered that fact. At the center of the chamber, Speaker Vesithara presided over the meeting. She was not made of flesh and blood like most beings. She was pure energy, a glowing form that shifted and changed like fire without heat. Her voice, when she spoke, seemed to come from everywhere at once. The council was discussing trade routes when the alarm sounded. It was not a loud sound, but it was unusual enough that every being in the chamber turned their attention to the central platform. A message appeared in the air, written in the common language that all council members could read. A ship was requesting permission to dock. That was not strange by itself. Ships came and went all the time, but this ship was different. It came from a system that the council had marked as restricted. It came from Earth. The chamber erupted in noise. Thousands of beings began talking at once in hundreds of different languages. Some stood up from their seats. Others made sounds of surprise or confusion. Krelvor sat very still, his eyes now fully open and fixed on the empty seat that bore Earth's symbol. Speaker Vesithara raised one hand, or what looked like a hand, and silence fell immediately. Her voice carried authority that came from centuries of leading the council. The ship calls itself Odyssey. It carries beings who call themselves humans. They request an audience with the council. More noise filled the chamber. Krelvor rose from his seat, his long body uncoiling until he stood at his full height. He was taller than most beings in the room, and when he spoke, his voice cut through the chatter like a blade. This is unprecedented. Earth has been silent for 10,000 years. Whatever primitive creatures now inhabit that world cannot possibly meet the standards required for council membership. I propose we deny their request and send them back to their isolated corner of the galaxy. Several council members voiced their agreement. But Speaker Vesithara remained still, her energy form pulsing slowly as she considered the situation. Finally, she spoke again. The seat was left for Earth by the progenitors themselves. The protocols are clear. If beings from that world arrive and request an audience, we must hear them. That is the law, and the law applies to all, even to those we do not expect or perhaps do not wish to see. Krelvor hissed softly, a sound of displeasure, but he sat back down. No one argued with the speaker when she invoked the ancient laws. The progenitors had founded the council, and their rules were absolute. Permission was granted. The human ship was allowed to dock. The council waited, and the chamber grew quiet with anticipation and curiosity. What would these humans look like? What would they say? And most importantly, why had they taken so long to arrive? The doors to the chamber opened. Two figures walked through, and every eye in the room turned to watch them. They were small compared to most of the beings present. They stood on two legs and had two arms, a body shape that was common enough in the galaxy. Their skin was a light brown color, smooth and unmarked by scales or fur. They wore simple clothing that looked practical rather than decorative. The first human was a male. He had short dark hair that was beginning to turn gray at the sides, and his face had lines that suggested many years of experience. He walked with purpose, his back straight and his eyes calm. This was Commander Kyle Morrison, though the council did not yet know his name. The second human was a female. She was younger than the male, with long hair tied back from her face. She carried a small device in her hands and looked around the chamber with obvious interest, her eyes bright with curiosity. This was Dr. Nina Carter, a scientist who had spent her entire life studying alien cultures. They walked to the center of the chamber, and stopped before the speaker. Morrison looked up at the being of pure energy and showed no fear. Nina stood beside him, her fingers moving over the device she carried, recording everything she saw. Speaker Vesisthara regarded them for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice gentler than it had been before. "Welcome to the Galactic Council. You are the first of your kind to stand in this chamber. State your purpose." Morrison cleared his throat. When he spoke, his voice was clear and steady. He did not sound nervous, though he stood before beings who could destroy his entire planet with a thought. "I am Commander Kyle Morrison, representing the United Earth Government. This is Dr. Nina Carter, our Chief Scientist and Cultural Liaison. We come to claim the seat that has been held for our world. We seek membership in this council not as servants or subjects, but as equals." The chamber exploded with noise again. Some beings laughed. Others made sounds of disbelief. Krelvor rose once more, his scales bristling with anger. "Equals? You have just arrived at our doorstep after 10,000 years of silence. You know nothing of our ways, our history, or our technology. What makes you think you have earned equality?" Morrison turned to face the Zenithar ambassador. He did not flinch from those yellow eyes or that imposing height. Instead, he smiled slightly, a gesture that seemed to confuse many of the watching beings. "We have earned it by surviving. We have earned it by reaching the stars on our own without help or guidance from anyone. We have earned it by building a civilization that spans multiple worlds, and by developing technology that allowed us to cross the distance between stars." Nina stepped forward, her device held out. Images appeared in the air above it, holographic projections that showed Earth and its colonies. There were cities on Mars, stations orbiting Jupiter, settlements on the moons of Saturn. There were ships, hundreds of them, moving between worlds. We have explored our own solar system thoroughly. We have established permanent populations on 6 different worlds and 12 moons. Our ships can travel faster than light. Our technology may not be as old as yours, but it is effective and constantly improving. Krelvor studied the images with narrowed eyes. He had to admit grudgingly that what the humans showed was impressive for such a young species. But it was not enough to satisfy him. Technology and expansion are not enough. Many species can build ships and claim territory. What matters is how you use that power. What matters is whether you can be trusted. Morrison nodded slowly. "Then tell us what we must do to prove ourselves. Give us a challenge. We did not come here to beg for acceptance. We came here to earn it." Before Krelvor could respond, Nina spoke again. Her voice was softer than Morrison's, but no less firm. "There is something else you should know. On our journey here, we encountered automated defense systems near the border of your territory, ancient machines that attacked our ships without warning. We destroyed them." The chamber went completely silent. Several council members leaned forward in their seats. Krelvor's eyes widened slightly, the first sign of genuine emotion he had shown. "You speak of the Sentinels. That is impossible. Those machines have destroyed entire fleets. They are remnants of a war fought long before your species learned to make fire. No one has been able to overcome them." Nina tapped her device again. New images appeared, showing wreckage floating in space, the twisted remains of machines that looked nothing like human technology. They were elegant and deadly, built by hands that had turned to dust millions of years ago. We studied their attack patterns. We analyzed their technology. Then we developed countermeasures. It took us 3 months and cost us 2 ships, but we found their weaknesses and exploited them. They are no longer a threat to our vessels. Morrison added to her explanation, his voice calm and matter-of-fact. "Humans are good at adapting. We learn from our enemies. Every time something tries to kill us, we figure out how to kill it back. That is how we survived on Earth. That is how we survived in space. And that is how we will continue to survive, no matter what challenges we face." Speaker Vesisthara regarded the 2 humans with what might have been respect, though it was hard to tell with a being made of energy. She turned to address the entire council. "The humans have presented their case. We must now decide how to proceed. I call for a recess so that all members may consider what has been said here today. We will reconvene in 3 standard cycles to vote on Earth's petition for membership." As the council members began to file out of the chamber, Krelvor, Nina Carter walked through the halls of the Archives of Memory, with her mouth slightly open in wonder. The building, if it could be called that, seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. Walls shifted and changed as she passed them. showing glimpses of other times and places. The ceiling stretched up so far that she could not see where it ended, and lights floated in the air like stars that had been captured and tamed. Beside her walked Archivist Prime Solace, a being who looked like a massive insect but moved with surprising grace. His compound eyes reflected the lights around them, creating patterns that shifted and danced. He had been the keeper of these archives for 300 years, and he knew every piece of knowledge stored within these walls. The Council granted you access to the General Archives. You may study our history and our cultures. However, there are sections that remain restricted. I trust you will respect those boundaries. Nina nodded, though her attention was already pulled in a dozen different directions by the wonders around her. Of course, I only want to understand, why was Earth's seat left empty? Why did no one ever contact us? Solace was quiet for a moment. Then he led her to a large chamber filled with glowing screens that floated in the air. Each screen showed different information, different histories, different worlds. That information is in the General Archives. You may access it freely. The progenitors, those who founded the Council, visited Earth approximately 10,000 of your years ago. They observed your world and its inhabitants. Then they left instructions that a seat should be reserved for the dominant species of your planet, but that they should never be contacted. They had to find their own way to the stars, but why? Nina asked. Why leave a seat and then tell everyone to stay away? Solace turned away, his body language suggesting discomfort. That information is restricted. I cannot share it with you. Nina felt frustration rising but pushed it down. She was a scientist. She knew that sometimes you had to work around obstacles rather than confronting them directly. She spent the next several hours reading through the General Archives, learning about the Council's history and the many species that made it up. The information was fascinating, but it did not answer the question that burned in her mind. As the station's artificial day cycle turned to night, Nina found herself alone in one of the smaller archive rooms. She sat before a floating screen, her fingers moving through holographic displays of ancient star charts. Then she noticed something odd. There was a gap in the timeline. Records from around the time the progenitors visited Earth were less detailed than records from other periods. It was as if someone had removed information. She heard a sound behind her and turned quickly. A young Zenithar stood in the doorway, smaller than Ambassador Krelvor and with brighter scales. He looked nervous, his eyes darting around as if checking to make sure they were alone. Dr. Carter, my name is Draktor. I am an aide to Ambassador Krelvor. I should not be here. But I felt you should know something. Nina stood up slowly, careful not to make any sudden movements that might frighten him away. What do you want to tell me? Draktor moved closer, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. The reason for Earth's isolation is in the restricted archives. The progenitors were afraid of your species, not because you were strong, but because of what they saw in you. There is a recording made by the progenitors themselves. It explains everything, but you will never be given access to it. Where is this recording? How can I see it? Draktor hesitated, clearly struggling with himself. Then he made a decision. I can show you where it is, but if we are caught, both of us will face severe consequences. The Council does not take kindly to those who break the rules regarding restricted information. Nina did not hesitate. Show me. They moved through the archives like shadows, Draktor leading the way through passages that seemed to exist only when you knew where to look. The restricted section was protected by multiple security systems, but Draktor had access codes that his position granted him. He used them now, knowing that each use would be logged and traced back to him eventually. Finally, they stood before a sealed chamber. Inside, a single crystal floated in the air, glowing with a soft blue light. Draktor activated it with a gesture, and a holographic figure appeared in the air before them. The figure was humanoid but clearly not human. Its skin was translucent, showing complex patterns of light moving beneath the surface. Its eyes were large and knowing, and when it spoke, its voice carried the weight of immense age and wisdom. I am Keeper Tal Shan of the progenitors. This recording is made for those who come after us, so that they may understand our decision regarding the world we call Earth and the species we observed there. Nina leaned forward, her heart beating faster. This was it. This was the answer she had been seeking. We have traveled to millions of worlds and studied countless species. We have seen evolution take many paths, create many forms of life, but we have never seen anything quite like the humans of Earth. They are not the strongest species we have encountered. They are not the most intelligent, nor the most technologically advanced. In their current state, they are primitive, barely beginning to understand the world around them. Yet they possess something that disturbs us. They possess an unwillingness to accept limitations. We observe them in their natural environment. Watch them spread across their planet, adapting to every climate and every challenge. Other species find a comfortable niche and remain there. Humans push into deserts and frozen wastelands, into jungles and mountains. They survive in places that should kill them, and they do so through sheer determination and creativity. The hologram shifted, showing images of early humans. Nina recognized them from her own studies. Stone Age tribes building fires and making tools, surviving against predators that were larger and stronger. We studied their psychology. They dream of the impossible and then work to make it real. They tell stories of flying like birds centuries before they develop the technology to do so. They imagine walking on their moon when they have barely learned to forge metal. This is not normal behavior for a developing species. Most beings accept their limitations and work within them. Humans seem incapable of accepting that anything is truly impossible. More disturbing is their approach to conflict. They are a violent species, yes, but that is not unusual. Many species are violent. What makes humans different is how they learn from violence. Each war they fight teaches them new ways to fight the next one. Each enemy they face makes them stronger. They do not simply defeat their opponents. They study them, understand them, and incorporate what they learn into their own methods. The progenitor paused, and when he spoke again, his voice carried something that might have been fear. We have made a decision. We will leave a seat for Earth, but we will not contact its inhabitants. If humans destroy themselves, as many violent species do, then the seat will remain empty and serve as a memorial to what might have been. But if they survive their own violent nature and reach the stars on their own, if they develop faster than light travel without our help or guidance, then they will have proven themselves capable of controlling their destructive impulses. When they arrive at the Council, if they arrive, they will be the most dangerous species in the galaxy, not because they are evil or cruel, but because they cannot be stopped. They cannot be discouraged. They will find solutions to problems that other species would declare unsolvable. They will survive situations that should kill them, and they will never ever give up. The hologram faded, leaving Nina and Draktor standing in silence. Nina felt a strange mixture of emotions. Pride in her species, yes, but also concern. The progenitors had been afraid of humanity. What did that mean for Earth's future with the Council? Behind them a voice spoke, making them both jump. So now you know. Archivist Prime Solace stood in the doorway, his compound eyes reflecting their surprised faces. I wondered how long it would take you to find your way here. You are persistent, Dr. Carter. Just as the progenitors said your kind would be. Nina felt her heart sink. We are sorry. We should not have accessed restricted information. If there is punishment, it should fall on me, not on Draktor. He was only trying to help. Solace made a sound that might have been a laugh. Punishment? No, Dr. Carter. I am not here to punish you. I am here because I knew you would come. I have been the keeper of these archives for 3 centuries, and I have learned to recognize certain patterns. Humans always seek the truth, no matter what rules they must break to find it. It is both your greatest strength and your most terrifying quality. He moved closer, his ancient body still graceful despite his age. The Council must know what you have learned. This information was kept secret, because many members feared that if Earth ever sent representatives, that knowledge would only make the fear worse. But secrets have a way of causing more harm than truth. What do you think will happen when the Council votes on our membership? Nina asked. Solace was quiet for a long moment. I think many will vote against you out of fear. Ambassador Krelvor, in particular, sees humanity as a threat to the established order. The Zenithar have been powerful for millennia, and they are comfortable with that power. They do not want change, and the council chamber was completely silent as Ambassador Krelvor stood to address the assembly. 3 cycles had passed since the humans arrived, and now the time had come for a decision. But Krelvor had no intention of allowing a simple vote. He had spent those 3 cycles preparing a different approach. Honored members of the council, we face an unprecedented situation. Humans arrive at our doorstep after 10,000 years of silence and demand to be treated as equals. They show us images of their accomplishments and tell us of their victories. But images and words are easy. Any species can make grand claims. What matters is proof. Commander Morrison stood in the center of the chamber beside Nina. He had expected something like this. The Zenithar ambassador had been too quiet during the recess, too calculating. Now the trap was being revealed. I propose a test. If humanity truly deserves a seat on this council, they must prove their capability by accomplishing something that no other species has achieved. They must venture to the Void Reach and return with a data core from the abandoned progenitor facility located there. The chamber erupted with noise. Several council members stood up, some in protest, others in agreement. Nina gripped Morrison's arm, her face pale. The Void Reach? That is a death sentence. 17 expeditions have been sent there over the centuries. None have returned. Krelvor smiled, showing teeth that looked very sharp. Precisely. If humans are as capable as they claim, as adaptable and unstoppable as the ancient records suggest, then they should have no difficulty with this task. And if they fail, well, then we will know they were not ready for membership after all. Morrison stepped forward before anyone else could speak. We accept. Nina turned to stare at him in shock. Morrison, we cannot possibly survive in the Void Reach. The spatial distortions alone would tear our ship apart, and we have no data on how to navigate through dark matter anomalies of that density. Morrison met her eyes calmly. Then we will figure it out. We always do. He turned back to face the council. Give us 3 days to prepare. Then we will depart for the Void Reach. Speaker Vesthara regarded the human commander with what might have been concern. Commander Morrison, you do not have to accept this challenge. It is unreasonable and unnecessarily dangerous. We can proceed with a standard vote. With respect, Speaker, we both know that a standard vote would fail. Too many council members fear what humanity represents. They will vote against us unless we prove beyond any doubt that we belong here. So we will take the test and we will pass it. The 3 days passed quickly. The crew of the Odyssey worked around the clock, modifying their ship based on every scrap of data they could find about the Void Reach. It was not much. Most expeditions that entered the region had simply disappeared. Their last transmissions cut off mid-sentence as reality itself tore them apart. Lieutenant Sarah Hughes, the ship's pilot, studied navigation charts that made no sense. Space in the Void Reach did not follow normal rules. Distances changed constantly. Time flowed at different rates in different areas. It was like trying to navigate through a nightmare. This is insane. We are going to die in there. She said it matter-of-factly, without panic or fear, just stating what she saw as an obvious truth. Chief Engineer Paul Grant looked up from the engine modifications he was making. Probably, but we might not. And if we do not try, we definitely fail. So we might as well give it our best shot. Captain Jake Bennett, Morrison's second-in-command, coordinated the efforts. He was a practical man, someone who believed in planning for every possibility. But even he had to admit that there was no way to plan for the Void Reach. They were going in blind, hoping that human ingenuity would be enough. On the morning of the 4th day, the Odyssey departed from council space. Several council members gathered to watch them go. Some showed respect. Others showed pity, certain they were watching humans leave for their deaths. Krelvor watched with satisfaction, convinced that he had found a way to eliminate the human problem without actually having to vote against them. The journey to the edge of the Void Reach took 2 days of faster-than-light travel. As they approached the boundary, the ship's sensors began showing increasingly strange readings. Space itself seemed to shimmer and twist ahead of them, like looking at the world through broken glass. Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the view screen with his hands clasped behind his back. All crew to stations. Shields to maximum. Sarah, take us in slowly. At the first sign of structural stress, I want to know immediately. Hughes guided the ship forward, her hands steady on the controls despite the fear she felt. The moment they crossed the boundary into the Void Reach, everything changed. The ship shuddered violently. Alarms began sounding throughout the vessel. On the view screen, reality seemed to fold in on itself, showing images that could not possibly exist. Shields are fluctuating. I am reading spatial distortions on all sides. Time dilation is occurring in pockets throughout the region. Grant's voice came through the communication system, strained but controlled. We need to adjust our shield frequency constantly or they will collapse. For the next 6 hours, they crept through the Void Reach at a pace that was agonizingly slow. Several times, the ship came within seconds of complete structural failure. Grant worked miracles in the engine room, constantly adjusting systems that were never designed to handle this kind of stress. He used components in ways that would have made their manufacturers weep, combining technologies that should not work together but somehow did. Hughes found herself navigating by instinct more than by instruments. The sensors showed readings that made no sense, distances that changed even as she looked at them. Instead, she watched the patterns of distortion, looking for the subtle differences between dangerous anomalies and merely dangerous anomalies. It was like learning a new language while someone was shooting at you, but slowly she began to understand. The crew faced another challenge as well. The temporal distortions affected their minds. Some crew members experienced memories that had not happened yet. Others felt time moving at different speeds, seconds stretching into hours or hours compressing into moments. It was disorienting and psychologically devastating, but humans had one advantage that most species lacked. They were social creatures who relied on each other for support. When one crew member felt themselves losing grip on reality, another would be there to anchor them. They talked to each other constantly, sharing jokes and stories, using humor to fight off the psychological effects of the void reach. Nina worked in the lab, analyzing the dark matter readings and trying to find patterns they could use. She discovered that while the distortions seemed random, they actually followed complex mathematical rules. It was like a puzzle, and if you could understand the rules, you could predict where the next distortion would occur. After 12 hours of constant struggle, they saw it. The progenitor facility appeared on their sensors, a massive structure floating in a pocket of stable space within the chaos of the void reach. It looked like a city built by beings who understood reality at a level humans could barely imagine. There it is. Now we just have to dock with it, retrieve the data core, and get back out. Simple. Bennett's attempt at humor fell flat, but it made several crew members smile despite their exhaustion. They approached the facility carefully, and that was when everything went wrong. The structure's automated defense systems activated, weapons that had been dormant for millennia suddenly coming to life. Energy beams lanced out toward the Odyssey, each one powerful enough to vaporize the ship. Hughes threw the ship into evasive maneuvers, her hands flying over the controls. Morrison barked orders, trying to coordinate a defense against an enemy they had not expected. The crew scrambled to their combat stations, but they were already exhausted from the journey through the void reach. We cannot win this fight. Our weapons are nothing compared to theirs, and our shields are already weakened. Nina's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge. We need to try something else. Morrison looked at her. What do you suggest? Communication. These defenses are automated, but they must have recognition protocols. The progenitors left Earth's seat for us. Maybe they left instructions here too. Let me try to talk to the system. Morrison made a quick decision. Do it. All weapons, hold fire. Sarah, get us out of their direct line of attack, but stay close enough for communication range. Nina worked frantically, using everything she had learned about progenitor language and culture. She broadcast a message on multiple frequencies, identifying the Odyssey as a human vessel, explaining that they had come to claim their inheritance, that Earth's seat was finally being filled. For a long moment, nothing happened. The weapons continued to track them, continued to fire. Then suddenly they stopped. The energy beams cut off mid-burst. The facility's defenses powered down. A new signal came through, old and patient, speaking in a language that Nina's translation software could barely comprehend. The signal contained coordinates and an access code. Nina input them into the ship's navigation system with shaking hands. A docking port opened on the facility's hull, an entrance that had been sealed for thousands of years. They know us. They were waiting for us. Her voice was filled with wonder. The Odyssey docked with the facility, and Morrison led a small team. The Odyssey emerged from the void reach like a ship rising from beneath dark waters, damaged, scarred, but intact. The crew was exhausted, many of them barely able to stand after days of constant stress and danger. But they had succeeded. The data core rested securely in the ship's vault, its crystalline surface pulsing with ancient knowledge. Word of their return spread through council space faster than light itself. No one had expected them to survive. The council chamber filled quickly as members rushed to witness what many thought would be impossible. Humans returning from the void reach alive. Ambassador Krelvor stood in his place, his scaled face showing an emotion that few had ever seen there before. Uncertainty. He had been so sure that the humans would fail, so confident that he had found a way to eliminate them without political consequences. Now they were back, and he did not know what to do. Commander Morrison walked into the chamber with the same steady confidence he had shown before. Beside him, Nina carried the data core in a special container. Behind them came the rest of the crew, moving slowly, their exhaustion obvious. But they held their heads high. They had earned the right to be proud. Speaker Vesithara's energy form brightened with what might have been relief. "Commander Morrison, Dr. Carter, welcome back. We did not dare hope to see you again. The Void Reach has claimed so many lives over the millennia." Morrison set the container on the central platform. "We brought what you asked for. The data core from the progenitor facility. I believe this proves that humanity is capable of meeting whatever challenges the galaxy might present." The chamber was silent as technicians came forward to verify the authenticity of the core. They ran multiple tests, checking its composition and confirming that it was indeed from the progenitor facility. There could be no doubt. The humans had accomplished what no other species had managed in 10,000 years. A counselor from the Avix delegation stood, her crystalline body refracting light in beautiful patterns. "My name is Counselor Thexrin. I speak now not just for my people but for all beings who value courage and determination. What the humans have accomplished is nothing short of miraculous. I move that we accept Earth's petition for council membership immediately." Several other council members voiced their agreement. But Krelvor was not ready to concede. He stood once more, and this time his voice carried desperation. "Yes, they survived. Yes, they succeeded where others failed. But does that not prove my point? Does that not show how dangerous they are? They have been a spacefaring species for less than a century. Yet they can accomplish what civilizations with thousands of years of experience could not. What will they be capable of in another 100 years? Another 1,000? He turned to address the entire council, his yellow eyes burning with intensity. The progenitors feared them. That is why Earth was isolated. That is why no contact was made. They saw something in humanity that terrified beings who had mastered reality itself. And now we propose to give these dangerous creatures access to all our knowledge, all our technology, all our resources. His voice grew louder, more forceful. I say we should enforce the quarantine. We should return these humans to Earth and ensure they never leave their system again. For the safety of the galaxy, for the preservation of order, we must contain them before they become unstoppable. The chamber erupted in argument. Some supported Krelvor, their own fears of change and disruption finally finding a voice. Others argued against him, insisting that humanity had proven themselves worthy. The debate grew heated, with civilizations threatening to withdraw from the council if their preferred outcome was not achieved. Morrison stood calmly in the center of the chaos, waiting. He had expected this. Fear was powerful, and it made beings act irrationally. Finally, Speaker Vesithara called for order, and slowly the noise subsided. "Before we vote, I believe we should examine the data core. The progenitors left it in that facility for a reason. Perhaps it contains information relevant to our decision." Nina nodded and activated the core. Holographic images filled the chamber, showing scenes from across the galaxy's history. But more importantly, a voice began to speak. The same voice from the restricted archives, but this time with a different message. A message meant for this exact moment. "I am Keeper Talshan. If you are hearing this message, it means humanity has arrived at the Galactic Council and has survived the test of the Void Reach. It means our predictions were correct. Now I must tell you something that we kept secret even from ourselves for as long as we could." Every being in the chamber leaned forward, captivated by the ancient voice. "We progenitors did not disappear by choice. We did not transcend reality because we achieved some enlightenment. We left because we had to. We discovered a threat coming from beyond this galaxy, something we called the Void Corruption. It is a force that consumes entire realities, that breaks down the laws of physics themselves. We fought it on a higher plane of existence, knowing that we would eventually lose." The hologram shifted, showing images of space being torn apart, of stars being unmade, of reality itself being consumed by something that should not exist. We knew that physical beings would need to continue the fight when we fell. We searched the galaxy for a species capable of facing impossible odds and refusing to surrender. We found none. Every advanced civilization we encountered had become comfortable, had lost the edge necessary to fight for survival. They had forgotten what it meant to struggle. Then we found Earth, We found humans, a species so young they did not yet understand the concept of metal tools, but they had something every other species lacked. They had a refusal to accept defeat that bordered on insanity. They had creativity that allowed them to find solutions where none should exist. They had a unity that came from knowing they were all in the struggle together. We left them alone not out of fear, though we were afraid. We left them alone because they needed to develop without outside interference. They needed to reach the stars on their own terms in their own way. And if they succeeded, if they arrived at this council, it would mean they were ready to face what is coming. The hologram focused on the council members, seeming to look at each of them individually. The void corruption is already entering this galaxy. Its vanguard forces will arrive within your lifetimes. Traditional military tactics will not work against an enemy that can rewrite the rules of reality. Traditional thinking will fail because this enemy does not think in traditional ways. You will need humanity. You will need their adaptability, their refusal to give up, their talent for finding unconventional solutions to impossible problems. Yes, humans are dangerous. Yes, they will change everything. But change is what you need. Stagnation has made you weak. Comfort has made you vulnerable. The void corruption will destroy you unless you are willing to embrace the chaos that humanity represents. The hologram faded, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The implications of what they had just heard were staggering. An existential threat was coming, and their only hope was to work with the very species they feared. Krelvor sat down slowly, his body seeming to deflate. For the first time in his long life, he understood that his fear had been misplaced. He had been afraid of humans threatening Xanathar dominance, threatening the established order. But the established order was doomed anyway if the progenitors were correct. The choice was not between accepting humans or maintaining the status quo. The choice was between adapting or dying. Morrison spoke into the silence, his voice calm and measured. We did not know about the void corruption until now, but it does not change anything. Humanity will fight because that is what we do. We will fight whether you accept us or not, but we would prefer to fight together with you. We would prefer to share what we know, to learn from your experience and wisdom, and to face this threat as allies rather than as isolated strangers. Nina added her own thoughts. You fear change because change is uncomfortable. We understand that. But humans have learned that change is necessary for growth. Standing still is just another form of death. The galaxy is about to change whether you want it to or not. The question is whether you will be part of that change or be swept away by it. Speaker Vesithara regarded them both for a long moment. Then she turned to the council. We must vote, not just on humanity's membership, but on our own future. Do we face what is coming with hope and determination? Or do we cling to our fear and comfort until the end? Krelvor stood one final time. His voice was different now, without the anger and fear that had colored it before. I withdraw my opposition. More than that, I propose that we not only accept humanity into the council, but that we ask them to lead our preparation efforts against the void corruption. They have already proven they can overcome challenges we thought impossible. Let them teach us how to fight again. The vote was called. One by one, civilizations that had existed for thousands of years raised their voices in agreement. Earth was granted its seat. Humanity was welcomed into the Galactic Council, not as junior partners or probationary members, but as full and equal participants. As the session ended and council members began to depart, Krelvor approached Morrison. The human commander waited calmly as the tall Xanathar drew near. I was wrong about your species. I let fear control my judgment. That was... Do you think we can win? She asked quietly. Morrison took the coffee and sipped it before answering. I do not know. The progenitors tried and failed. They were more advanced than we could ever imagine. But they were also alone, fighting on a higher plane of existence where they could not ask for help. We have something they did not. We have unity, or at least we are building it. We have dozens of species working together, combining their knowledge and experience. Maybe that will be enough, and if it is not enough, then we keep fighting anyway. That is what humans do. We do not give up just because the odds are bad. We find a way or we die trying. And now the rest of the galaxy is starting to understand that mindset. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships move through the darkness of space. Below them, thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds prepared for a threat they could barely imagine. But 3 months had passed since Earth claimed its seat on the Galactic Council. 3 months since the revelation about the void corruption changed everything. The council chamber looked the same. The seats still arranged in their ancient circles, but the atmosphere had transformed completely. Where there had been complacency, there was now purpose. Where there had been comfortable routine, there was now urgent preparation. Nina stood in what had become her laboratory, a space provided by the Council for Human Research. The walls were covered with screens showing data from the outer edges of the galaxy. Long-range sensors had confirmed what the progenitors warned about. Something was coming. Small distortions in space-time, anomalies that should not exist. The vanguard of the void corruption, testing the galaxy's defenses. Admiral Helen Price had arrived 2 weeks after Earth's acceptance into the Council. She was a stern woman with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. But she was also brilliant, a strategic genius who could see patterns where others saw only chaos. She stood beside Nina now, studying the same data with a frown. The projections are not good. If the corruption continues advancing at its current rate, we have maybe 500 years before it reaches the core worlds. That sounds like a lot of time, but it is not. Not when we are trying to prepare an entire galaxy that has forgotten how to fight. Nina nodded without looking away from the screens. The Council species have advanced technology, but most of their military forces are designed for policing and peacekeeping, not for total war. They have not faced an existential threat in thousands of years. They have become soft. Price allowed herself a small smile. Then it is a good thing they have us. Humans remember how to fight because we never stopped. Every generation faces new challenges, new conflicts. We stay sharp because we have to. In another part of the Council station, Morrison was meeting with military commanders from a dozen different species. The room was crowded, filled with beings of every size and shape imaginable. Some sat in chairs. Others floated in the air or stood on multiple legs. But they all shared one thing. They were warriors, or at least they had been before peace made their skills unnecessary. Morrison stood at the head of the table, a holographic display showing his proposal for a new defensive strategy. We cannot fight the void corruption with conventional tactics. It does not follow the rules we are used to. It can manipulate reality itself, turn our own technology against us. So we need to think differently. A Zenithar officer, younger than Krelvor but with the same sharp intelligence, spoke up. What do you propose, Commander? We stop relying on our technology as a crutch. We use it, yes, but we do not depend on it completely. We train our forces to adapt, to improvise, to find solutions when the normal rules do not apply. We create small, flexible units that can respond to changing situations instead of massive fleets that need perfect conditions to function. An Avix commander, her crystalline body reflecting the light, seemed skeptical. That goes against thousands of years of military doctrine. Our strategies are based on coordination, on precise planning, on knowing every variable before we commit to action. Morrison met her gaze steadily. And that is why you will lose if you face the void corruption with those strategies. You cannot plan for an enemy that changes the rules. You cannot coordinate when communication systems fail because reality itself is breaking down. You need to be able to think on your feet, to make decisions with incomplete information, to succeed despite not knowing all the variables. The Avix commander considered this for a long moment. Then she inclined her head in a gesture of respect. Then teach us. Show us how humans fight when the rules do not matter. Over the following weeks, something remarkable began to happen. Humans and aliens trained together, learning from each other. Human soldiers taught ancient warriors how to improvise and adapt. In return, those warriors taught humans about technologies and techniques that had been perfected over millennia. It was a cultural exchange unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. But not everyone was happy with the changes. Some council members still feared human influence, still worried that giving Earth too much authority would lead to disaster. There were protests, debates, and political maneuvering. Change was never easy, especially for civilizations that had been comfortable for so long. One evening, Krelvor sought out Morrison in the human quarters. The commander was reviewing reports when the Zenithar ambassador arrived looking troubled. Commander Morrison. I must speak with you about a delicate matter. There is a faction within my government that wants to limit human involvement in the defense preparations. They fear we are giving away too much control, too much influence. They worry that Earth will use this crisis to dominate the Council. Morrison set down the reports and gestured for Krelvor to sit. Those fears are not unreasonable. Power can corrupt, and we are asking for a lot of trust from species who do not know us well. What do you think, Ambassador? Do you believe we are trying to dominate the Council? Krelvor was silent for a moment. No. I have watched your people carefully these past months. You push for change, yes, but not for your own benefit. Every proposal you make is designed to help the galaxy survive, not to increase human power. You are willing to sacrifice your own comfort and safety for beings you barely know. That is not the behavior of those seeking domination. Then what do you need from me? I need you to understand that change takes time. Some species will adapt quickly. Others will resist even when they know resistance is foolish. Be patient with us. We are trying to unlearn thousands of years of habits and beliefs. That is not easy, Morrison smiled. Ambassador, humans have been changing our entire world for the past 3 months. We are living on a space station designed by beings who think in 4 dimensions. We are working with species we did not know existed half a year ago. We are preparing to fight an enemy that can break reality. If we can adapt to all that, we can certainly be patient with our allies. As the months continued to pass, the preparations intensified. Shipyards that had been used for peaceful construction were converted to military production. Scientists from dozens species worked together to develop new weapons and defenses. Training exercises brought together forces that had never worked in coordination before. Nina made a breakthrough in understanding the void corruption. By studying the data from the progenitor facility and combining it with observations of the approaching anomalies, she discovered something crucial. The corruption was not mindless. It had a kind of intelligence alien and incomprehensible, but intelligence nonetheless. It adapted to what it encountered, learned from each interaction. This changes everything, she told the assembled council leaders. We cannot develop a single strategy and stick to it. We need to be constantly evolving, constantly changing our approach. We need to be as adaptive as the enemy we face, maybe more so. Councillor Thexrin, who had become a close ally of humanity, spoke up. That sounds exhausting. Most species prefer stability, predictable patterns. You are asking us to embrace chaos, Nina nodded. Yes, I am asking you to embrace chaos, because the alternative is extinction. The void corruption thrives on order, on predictability. It consumes realities that follow fixed rules. Our only advantage is our ability to break those rules, to create new ones when necessary. 6 months after Earth claimed its seat, the first coordinated defense exercise took place. Ships from 20 different species gathered at the edge of Council space, ready to test their new tactics and strategies. Morrison and Admiral Price coordinated from the Odyssey, which had been repaired and upgraded with the best technology the Council could provide. The exercise simulated an encounter with void corruption forces. Computer-generated anomalies tested the fleet's ability to adapt and respond. At first there was chaos. Commanders used to careful planning struggled when situations changed unexpectedly, but humans were there to help, to show how to make decisions with partial information, how to trust instinct when logic failed. By the end of the exercise, something remarkable had happened. The mixed fleet had learned to work together despite their differences. They had learned to trust each other, to rely on each species' unique strengths. It was messy and imperfect, but it was effective. That evening, as ships returned to their berths and crews celebrated their success, Morrison stood on the observation deck of the Odyssey, looking out at the stars. Nina joined him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered one to him.